I am Saundra Green, a lifelong resident of Arlington. I grew up in the Halls Hill Highview Park community. My family goes back for 3 or 4 generations. I was employed by Arlington County for 29 years. I am married with 2 children. I've been a part of many organizations that dealt with all aspects of the Arlington County community. I grew up in Arlington. My childhood years were in the 50s, 1950s, and I grew up in segregated Arlington. I went to segregated schools. I went to Langston Elementary School here in Highview, which was segregated at the time that I went, and then I went on to Huffman Boston Junior Senior High School, the only junior senior high school for African Americans at that time. But I was only there for 1 year. And then I entered into Stratford Junior High School in September of 1959. The schools integrated in February of 1959. The first 4 students went. I went in that September with the next group of students, and I graduated from Washington Lee. I worked in Arlington for 29 years and for the Arlington Department of Parks and Recreation. I was assigned initially to this community, and I worked at Langston Community Center. So I was in charge of initiating and developing and overseeing recreation programs in the community where I live. I go to church here. My church is Callaway United Methodist. My children went to school here. My life has been in this community. When I grew up here in this community, the community was segregated. So everything that we did was in this little area. We didn't venture out much at all. And life was good here in our community. We had traditions here. People here were well connected. Everything that we did was to survive against all of the challenges that were in the world against African Americans. And this community was no different than any other community. So our life was here. So we had businesses, we had social events, we had annual traditions. We had our own fire department, which was started because no one would put out our fires. So the men in our community organized a fire department, which became an official fire department, which is still here today. When I was growing up, the hub of our communities were the churches, and that's where things happened. Those were our largest buildings that we owned. So a lot of important things happened in the churches, and the churches weren't only for worship then. Any important meetings in the community during when I was growing up took place in the churches. And there may have been meetings about political things, but it took place in the church. The fight to desegregate public facilities and schools took place in our churches. There are a lot of things that went on in our community that had to do with making our community a better place, and that had to do with efforts to make life better for African Americans. A lot of the African American history is very important to what happened in Arlington. A lot of the history that was developed by African Americans are very significant. One example would be the integration of schools here. When the schools integrated here in 1959, we were the first place in the state of Virginia to integrate the schools, and that's very significant. And it happened right here in Arlington, and the 4 students came right here from Highview Park. And, that's history. As an employee of Parks and Recreation, I initiated a lot of programs. The Arlington Youth Street Theater, it was a program in the performing arts. For years and years, the Department of Parks was segregated. And even when it integrated, there were not a lot of opportunities for the African American youth to be involved in the performing arts. It was a youth employment program for the summers, and the students would come and participate in the street theater, and it was a paid experience, but they were trained in the performing arts to include dance, vocal music, and the spoken word. And at the end of each summer, they performed throughout the county. They got so good that they even went to New York every summer to perform. Arlington County has come a long ways. Growing up here, I've seen both sides of I've seen Arlington at its worst, where things were challenging, where we could not do a lot of things in Arlington. And I have lived long enough to see a lot of those things change for the better. And I feel that Arlington has been one of the most progressive counties in the state of Virginia in terms of recognizing those things that were unjust and turning them around. We've had county officials and people in places that other counties have not had representation, and we have. I think that Arlington has progressed in many areas. Do we have a ways to go? Yeah, like everybody else. We're not there yet. But you see the initiatives always happening in Arlington to move forward.